Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. On the show tonight.
If this could happen to me, it could happen to absolutely anyone.
With charges dropped, a state representative shares his story of facing arrest.
The mail touches everybody. It's not red or blue.
Two members of Congress weigh in on the Postal Service, mail-in voting, and the Democratic National Convention.
Joe's purpose has always driven him forward.
As special coverage of the Democratic National Convention, our Spotlight Politics team grades former teacher Jill Biden's performance and previews tonight's lineup.
Kamala Harris for the people.
Speaking of tonight's lineup, the significance of Kamala Harris as the vice presidential pick.
Every student deserves to come into a safe and welcoming environment.
Big changes in store for school resource officers in Chicago Public Schools.
Disparities between which homeowners and communities get tax exemptions. We dig into the findings.
80 years of art movements in this neighborhood.
And arts correspondent Angel Ito takes us on a tour through the historic Bronzeville neighborhood. But first, here are some of tonight's top stories. 4 Chicago aldermen are calling for a special city council meeting this Friday to deal with the violence and the looting in recent weeks. Alderman Anthony Beal, Ray Lopez, Leslie Hairston, and Anthony Napolitano want to convene the body during their August recess to ask that Governor J.B. Pritzker deploy the National Guard to help police the city. Mayor Lori Lightfoot has rejected recent calls for the National Guard, but did ask and get assistance after the unrest on May 31st. Today, the mayor blasted Alderman Beal and Lopez and likened the move to a stunt.
The two main proponents of this meeting unfortunately have a history of grandstanding. They don't listen, they don't ask questions, and they're not really committed to answers. So we'll see what happens.
The council is not scheduled to meet until September 9th and would need 26 members to sign on if a special meeting is to be held. And there's more on this story on our website. A faster COVID-19 test may be on the way. Governor Pritzker announces that the University of Illinois has won approval from the FDA to develop a COVID-19 saliva test. That test is said to produce rapid results at a lower cost, which could lead to large-scale surveillance testing. Governor Pritzker says it could be a game changer in the fight to control the spread.
The potential here is enormous. I'm so proud, but not at all surprised, to see this type of groundbreaking work come out of our own University of Illinois.
And it can't come soon enough. The state reports its highest new case total since May, with just under 2,300 cases reported today. The total case count in Illinois is now just under 212,000. Plus, there were 25 additional confirmed deaths for a statewide death toll of more than 7,800. The 7-day testing positivity rate right now is 4.4%. And now, Brandis, we go back to you.
Paris, thank you. A single father, a lawyer, and a state legislator arrested on a gun charge. Now that the charge has been dropped, he's sharing his story with Chicago Tonight, including video of the incident. Amanda Venicky joins us now with more. Amanda.
Brandis, State Representative Curtis Tarver, a Democrat, says if it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone. This goes back to an incident in November. Tarver, that is, was pulled over in his district at about 64th and Stony Island Avenue for initially having a headlight out. He says he was appreciative at first. He hadn't known that his headlight was out. He shared a video with from Chicago Police Department cameras with WTTW. Now, by law, CPD can't share it with us directly, at least not immediately. When the video is silent as it is now, that's because the raw video we got is 2. You see Tarver give ID cards to officers. He says one then asked if he had a gun in his car.
Being a trained attorney, a headlight being out is not necessarily a reason to ask for a firearm. And so I disclosed it because, quite honestly, I'm a black man on the south side of Chicago. I'm afraid not to. And so you kind of trade your constitutional rights for the ability to, to make it home and see your family. And so when they asked about the firearm, I told them that I had a firearm in the vehicle, that I had concealed carry. I told them where it was. And he said, well, hand it to me, which made me very concerned for obvious reasons. And so I explained to him, that they could shine a light in the car and they could remove it themselves if they like, but I was a little afraid to hand him the firearm. He insisted on me handing it to him. So I had to explain to him that I was going to remove the magazine from it and then hand him the firearm with the triggers facing him and the barrels facing me, where I had to give him some level of comfort, I guess, although it's terrifying for me.
You can see that exchange in this video. Now, in case it isn't obvious, here is why he was hesitant.
If everybody's in fear of their life and police officers shoot unarmed black men in the back, the last thing you would expect for them to say is to hand me a firearm, right?
Tarver says he was within his rights to have that gun. He says he had then and still does have a valid firearm owner's identification card, also a concealed carry license. Problem is, the database that CPD accessed didn't evidently show that. You can hear the officers talk about what to do.
No, because he could still carry it. He's legal.
Yeah, but if it's a revoked CCL, then he's still carrying
I thought you meant his license.
No. His concealed carries.
Doesn't say when it got revoked, but the expiration.
Oh no, I misunderstood. I think you meant his license was revoked.
It shows when it was issued.
Tarver says he offered to call the state police to try to clear this up and make known to the officers that he had renewed his concealed carry license. Instead, he says he was handcuffed, taken to the Wentworth police station, where he says he didn't get to use a bathroom for 7 hours. Police were aware he's an elected official.
But he's a congressman.
Tarver was charged with the misdemeanor of failing to surrender a concealed carry license. He says the issue was due to a clerical error that didn't show that his CCL license was valid. The charge was dismissed earlier this month. Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox's office in a statement says, after a review, we concluded that the evidence was insufficient to meet our burden of proof to move forward with the prosecution. We can confirm that on August 4th, 2020, the court granted our motion to dismiss this case. Meanwhile, the CPD says its officers were following protocol, which includes that someone with a handgun must permit the officer to safely secure the firearm for the duration of the investigative stop. Tarver says as part of having the charges drop, he had to permanently give up his gun, as in he didn't and will not get it back. In a statement, the state's attorney's office says firearms lawfully recovered as the result of a valid arrest are not returned. Tarver is also upset he was required to take off his hoodie sweatshirt for a mugshot. The CPD again says that that is in accordance with its policy, like if an arrestee has a distinguishing tattoo. Tarver has not filed any claims with the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, but he may. He also says he does plan to file a lawsuit over bad treatment and violations of his rights.
What if forgive being a state rep, what if I were not an attorney and didn't know my rights? What if I did not have a sister who could show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And say, hey, I'm a lawyer, I will speak with him. You know, then how different would things have been? So, I mean, that's what leaves a foul taste in my mouth, because my constituents who deal with this every single day, they don't have the means that I have.
Tarver also says when he helped to pass a law that bans discrimination in housing based on arrests, he had no idea he'd become the poster child for it. Brenda, back to you.
A lot to think about, Amanda. Thank you. And we'll see you back here later in the program to talk about the highs and lows of day 2 of the DNC and look ahead at tonight in a special convention edition of Spotlight Politics. But for now, we go back to Paris and some members of Illinois' congressional delegation. Paris.
Brandis, Joe Biden is officially the Democratic Party's nominee for president, and for the first time ever, the party nominated its candidate in a remote roll call vote featuring images from all 50 states and several territories. All this as the country struggles to control the coronavirus pandemic and as controversy surrounds the U.S. Postal Service and the general election. Joining us now as part of our special coverage of the Democratic National Convention are Congresswoman Robin Kelly, a Democrat representing Illinois' 2nd District, which includes parts of Chicago's far southeast side and southern suburbs, and Congressman Caston, a Democrat representing the 6th District, which includes parts of Chicago Chicago's northern and western suburbs. Welcome to both of you. I want to get right into it. Congresswoman Kelly, you are part of the House Oversight Committee, which will question the U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy next Monday. What are you hoping to hear from him?
Well, I want to hear from him. Where's our mail? Why did he decide to do all the things that he did? They claim that they're reversing some of the things that they did, but we don't know. Will they backtrack, or they're reversing it from, this current moment, or, or what the details are. So that's what we want to find out. And, mainly that people's mail will be delivered like it's supposed to be, on time, that people will be able to vote from home and be confident that their ballots will be counted.
And Congressman Caston, Mr. DeJoy did say that they would put a halt to any further cuts at the USPS or the further removal of mailboxes and sorting machines. Does that assuage your concerns as it relates to the mail-in vote?
No. So when we spoke with multiple people working in the post office, they have already removed machines that are used to sort mail. They've already put delays in place that have caused mail to back up and pile up. So you can't just stop the bad stuff you did. You got to undo the bad stuff you did. And we need to have a fair election. We need to make sure that people can get their medicine safely. You can't do that if it's stuck in a warehouse somewhere.
And part of doing that is passing a $25 billion appropriation for the U.S. Postal Service, which the House did, but it's planning to do that again. Congresswoman Kelly, will it have bipartisan support?
From what I understand, it will have some bipartisan support. I don't know how much. We never know until the vote is taken, but from my understanding, it will have some bipartisan support. The mail touches everybody. It's not red or blue. It's not partisan. So many people are concerned. Many seniors get their medicine through the mail. Many veterans get their medicine through the mail. So it's a big concern for everybody.
And Congressman Caston, will it take more than bipartisan support? Will you need a veto-proof majority?
Look, I sure hope the president doesn't veto it. The $25 billion that we put in the HEROES Act, which is stuck on McConnell's desk, and the $25 billion that we're going to vote on this coming week, was the number requested by all of the Trump-appointed directors of the USPS in order to address the higher costs that the post office has incurred as they've met their obligations to deliver the mail during COVID. So given as these are all people Trump has appointed, and given as we are giving them what they have asked for, I'd like to believe that that Trump will put country and the post office first, so that we don't have to worry about whether it's veto-proof.
All right, we'll see how this issue plays out. Congresswoman Kelly, I want to turn to some local politics. You answered a question yesterday to the Illinois delegation about the chairman of your party in Illinois, Mike Madigan, the Speaker of the House, and should he resign given his implication in the alleged ComEd bribery scheme. You said you want to wait until all the facts come out, and in this criminal information that ComEd has signed on to, it alleges pretty wide-scale bribery and implicates Speaker Mike Madigan. What else do you need to know?
I think I know we say it every 4 years, this is the most important election. This is the most important election, and it's the number one issue that Democrats have before them, and that's what many of us are concentrating on right now. We have to get Joe Biden elected. We have to flip the Senate, and we have to elect the down ballot Democrats. That's what I'm focusing on right now. I'm not telling you anything I haven't said to the Speaker. If he's guilty, I think that, he should resign. And that's my bottom line. But right now, to be honest, the number one thing that I'm concentrating on is getting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris elected, flipping the Senate, and helping the down ballot races. That's the most important.
Congressman Caston, do you agree? Do you think that Mike Madigan should still serve as the chairman of your party, given the implication in this federal bribery case?
Look, the fact of the matter is we have seen in stark relief over the past 6 months that there is one party that is absolutely adamant on insisting on the rule of law. We had a straight party line vote on whether a trial of the president should have witnesses. I am not going to sit here right now and say that we should decide that someone is guilty for political reasons. The allegations are extremely concerning. We should make sure that we go through, we find out where the truth is. And if they are in fact true, I agree with Congresswoman Kelly. They should resign, and maybe forcibly resign.
Let's talk about
we have honored that rule of law. We haven't done our job to recognize that we are a country that is governed by laws, and we have to always honor that rule of law first.
All right, let's talk about the program of the DNC for tonight. Congresswoman Kelly, the vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris is set to speak. What does she bring overall to the Democratic ticket?
She's fierce. She's intelligent. She brings diversity that we've never had before. And I think she brings, not that Vice President Biden doesn't bring energy, but she brings a certain kind of energy, a certain kind of twinkle and magic. That's all I can say. But I mean, she's fierce, she's smart, she's experienced. I have full confidence in her that she will be a great vice president.
And Congressman Caston, what do you expect from her speech tonight? A unifying positive speech or a speech that goes after President Trump?
Oh, you know, I'm looking forward to listening. I'm sure I'm going to be happy either way. She's such a dynamic and articulate and intelligent woman. I think it's going to be delightful to hear what she has to say. Look, I have so far been, I think as we all have, just glued to this convention because it is such a nice reminder to remember that for most of our history, we're countries where presidents recognize that they represent all Americans, not just the ones who voted for them, not just the ones who share their views, but we all of us who are fortunate enough to hold elected office, we only survive because we recognize that we represent everybody. And so far, this convention has echoed that loud and clear and has been such a lovely contrast.
Hey, Congressman Caston, you know, you ran your campaign on the climate change issue. Has there been enough said about that issue in the Democratic Party and in this convention?
Look, I'm glad to see that there is no debate within our party about whether science is real and whether the Enlightenment was a step forward for human progress. We're about out of time to act on this, and I would like to see us move forward really quickly. Now, that doesn't boil down to sound bites. That's wonky policy. And I think for the purpose of the convention, which is necessarily a little bit more soundbitey, it's been nice to see it elevated. For me, the question is, what do we do going forward, and do we make sure that we actually move with the seriousness that this deserves?
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. My thanks to Representatives Robin Kelly and Sean Caston.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paris.
And we'll have more coverage of the Democratic National Convention, including a convention edition of Spotlight Politics. But first, more on one of tonight's convention speakers, Brandis.
Paris, thank you. Kamala Harris's selection as Joe Biden's vice presidential running mate is historic in two ways, as she is both the first Black and South Asian woman on a major party national ticket. As the daughter of Indian and Jamaican immigrants, she presents Americans an opportunity to revisit assumptions about race in society, and in particular, challenge how Americans may see someone who is multiracial. Joining us now as part of our special coverage on the Democratic National Convention is Natasha Sharma, Associate Professor of African American Studies and Asian American Studies at Northwestern University. So first, thanks for joining us. You said that Kamala Harris, as the VP pick, she gives an opportunity to revisit our assumptions about race in the United States. How so?
Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I think that the nomination of Kamala Harris really gives us that opportunity in actually a number of ways. And we can see that in sort of the amounts of debates that people are having about her identity in all sorts of segments of society. On the one hand, I think it advances our ideas about race just in reminding us, as Obama did, that there are multiracial people in the United States. And by that, I mean people who would choose on the census or something, a similar sort of form, to select more than one racial identity. And, you know, Barack Obama informed the world, of course, about this. And we've had multiracial people in this nation for as long as the nation, has been around. The difference with Kamala Harris, however, is that it not only kind of tells us and reminds us about the fastest growing population in the United States, which is people who select more than one racial category, but also that there are many multiracial people who aren't part white. And that's where I think the discussion has been really interesting about Kamala Harris's multiraciality, the fact that she does not have a white parent, and conversations about her Blackness.
Have we in this country, have we been sort of, racially illiterate with regard to how we view those who are multiracial?
I think that we're racially illiterate and with regard to how we consider race as a whole. A lot of Americans understandably, because of the kinds of norms that we're taught, really think that race has something to do with biology, and it really doesn't. And so kind of racial studies 101 is saying that race is created by humans, and humans have imputed meaning onto other people based on what they look like. And this is processes of power. So on the one hand, I think that we are a little bit racially illiterate in general about race, and that illiteracy, that lack of understanding, really kind of amplifies when we talk about multiracial people. Just to give you some examples, on the one hand, a lot of people really dislike the term mixed race, right? Because the idea is, if we're challenging the idea that there's any pure race, which is the fallacy that this nation was founded upon, the fallacy of white racial purity to protect the interests of people in power, then of course people don't like the idea of mixed race, which means that some people are the combination of two pure races. It's a faulty term, but the reality is that people have multiple ancestries, but there are still a segment of society of people like Obama, like Kamala Harris, like myself, who were raised with parents who identify with two different racial, cultural, and other ancestral backgrounds. And that's an experience that we don't talk about, and there's a lot of suspicion granted toward those folks.
So most folks know that Kamala Harris is Indian and Black, but not everyone. Here she is. We have a quick clip of her with Hollywood actress and producer Mindy Kaling talking about that.
You are Indian.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about.
So it sounds like it's a point of pride then for both, those who are Indian as well as those who are Black. But, how much of this sort of failure to accurately identify or to observe someone's multiculturality, how much of that dates back to the American practice of the so-called sort of the one-drop rule, right? Where if a person had any Black ancestry, they're Black.
I think that's a great question, and in a lot of ways it holds the answer to the question, is that our ideas about race did not start in the United States. It started in Europe, but in the United States it was founded on particular racial logics or racial illogics, like the one-drop rule. If you're part Black, you are Black, and that was very beneficial to slaveholders. But that kind of logic actually still manifests today, and it's not just imposed by white people. A lot of communities of color, including members of Black communities, also would agree that, for instance, if Barack Obama is part Black, then he should identify as Black only because of the way race operates in the US. It's a little different here because, as you showed in the clip, she's really pointing out sort of her Indian ancestry. At least Mindy Kaling had her do that. But even in Kamala Harris's own autobiography, she really talks about her South Indian mother who raised her and who took her to India, and that she was close to her maternal side. On the other hand, she was raised in Oakland within a Black community, and her mom, who was Indian, was very much embraced by the Black community living at that Oakland-Berkeley border.
She also spoke about her ancestry when former Vice President and now obviously presidential nominee Joe Biden introduced her after her selection. Here's what she said.
And my mother and father, they came from opposite sides of the world to arrive in America. One from India and the other from Jamaica, in search of a world-class education. But what brought them together was the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And that's how they met, as students in the streets of Oakland, marching and shouting for this thing called justice, in a struggle that continues today.
And Professor Sharma, I apologize, we're very short on time now, but I wanted to get this last thing in, a little bit about, the politics of multiracial people's commitment and their place in politics.
Absolutely, it's very interesting, and we have to listen to what Kamala Harris says in terms of how she locates herself. But Jamaica and India are not really different sides of the world. They are both colonized by England, and so they actually have a lot in common, and that leads to also their experience at Berkeley and fighting in the civil rights movement. One thing to quickly say is that mixed race people are often presumed to have a white parent, and there's often the suspicion that they're turning, if you identify as mixed race, that you're turning your back on your community of color. In the case of Kamala Harris, we can't say that so swiftly because she is not she doesn't have a white parent. And so her commitments to communities of color, we can see that through her political sort of stances on things.
Of course, and we will have more special coverage of the Democratic National Convention, including a convention edition of Spotlight Politics in just a bit. But my thanks now to Professor Natasha Sharma for joining us.
Thank you.
For the last 15 years, Chicagoans have explored the art of one of the city's most historic neighborhoods thanks to a trolley. But this year, the Bronzeville Art District trolley tour is going virtual. Arts correspondent Angel Ito shares how 6 galleries on the city's south side are working to keep art relevant during the pandemic.
This year, the largest African American art district in the country is offering a virtual art tour. The district is located in Bronzeville.
We have the majority or the most galleries in one area that is either walkable or can be accessed by the trolley. And we haven't found this in any other area around the country.
It's a modified version of the Bronzeville Art District trolley tour, now virtual via Zoom. I was able to get a tour of a few of the galleries that will be included, like Gallery Gouchard. Their virtual experience will be a little bit different from the rest because they'll be showing their virtual exhibition catalogs.
Our virtual exhibition catalog allows you to actually tour the gallery at your leisure, at home with your family, 24 hours a day, and you literally drop into the gallery and you can walk around and see and get close on the art and get the information about pricing.
Now there is a part of the tour that isn't virtual. The Great Migration Sculpture Garden will be open for personal viewing.
Artists from the Bronzeville Artist Lofts will also be a stop on the tour. That includes Raymond A. Thomas, who will not only be doing a live painting, but showcasing recent works. One of those includes one that pays homage to Bronzeville's policy kings, also known as the Jones Brothers.
This door was from a show that we did here in the gallery downstairs called Echoes of Our Journey. And this actual door is one of the original doors from this building. I created a door celebrating the Jones Brothers. This building right here was owned by the Jones Brothers, so it's kind of like a multiple layers of history within this door. They own this building, which was the first black department store.
And the next stop on my tour, the Southside Community Art Center.
And while they aren't an official art gallery, they've offered context about Black art in Chicago for the last 80 years.
The Southside Community Art Center was a hub. And 1940, as you know, there really was not a place for the African American artists to come and feel comfortable, feel safe, to learn, to grow, to mentor with other artists. And the Southside Community Art Center was that place.
Other participants include Blanc Gallery, Fayette African Art, and Little Black Pearl Art and Design, which will also offer different virtual exhibitions each month. Now, Gouchard says it's a tradition they must continue to honor artists that have worked in Bronzeville and the neighborhood itself.
80 years of art movements in this neighborhood, going back to the Southside Community Arts Center, to the Work Progress Administration. It speaks to the collaborations that have been going on for many years and the great art that's in this community.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
This month's Bronzeville Art District virtual tour is this Friday evening at 7. Each virtual tour takes place on the 3rd Friday of the month through December. For those dates and more information on this story, you can visit our website. Still to come on Chicago Tonight. Following weeks of demonstrations, Chicago Public Schools makes changes to its school resource officer program. Looking into the disparities between which homeowners and communities get tax exemptions. And as special coverage of the Democratic National Convention, our Spotlight Politics team breaks down the highs and lows from day 2 and looks ahead to tonight. But first, we go back to Paris for some of today's top stories. Paris.
Yeah, Brandis, the U.S. Attorney's Office is crediting a Trump administration program with getting results in some major criminal investigations. U.S. Attorney John Lausch provided an update on Operation Legend, saying that 61 defendants in 49 separate cases relating to violent crime in Chicago have been charged since the program's launch last month. Operation Legend is an initiative from the Trump administration to provide extra federal agents to the FBI, DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshals Service. Mayor Lori Lightfoot confirms the city is in the process of coming up with a plan to replace aging lead pipes. The city's water management commissioner announced the plan to aldermen yesterday. It would replace the lead service lines in 400,000 homes that connect to mains running beneath the street. Lead pipes have been shown to cause elevated levels of lead poisoning in water. The project could cost as much as $10 billion over several years. The mayor did not say how the city exactly would pay for it, but says the project has to go forward regardless.
The time of reckoning is now. And as you heard from the water commissioner and from the budget director, we are hard at work on trying to address this issue and not kick the can down the road.
Governor Pritzker says it could be a game changer in the fight against the spread of COVID-19. The governor announces the University of Illinois has won approval from the FDA to develop a COVID-19 saliva test. This test is said to produce rapid results at a lower cost, and that could lead to large-scale surveillance testing.
Ongoing research continues to yield positive results. This has potentially game-changing implications for our statewide testing complex as well as for testing on a national level.
And the news comes as the state reports its highest new case total since May, with just under 2,300 cases reported. The total case count in Illinois is now just under 212,000. Also, there were 25 additional confirmed deaths for a total death toll of more than 7,800. The 7-day testing positivity rate right now is sitting at 4.4%. Following weeks of demonstrations, Chicago Public Schools announced changes to the School Resource Officer program for schools that voted to keep those officers. CPS CEO Janice Jackson says student activism helped guide the new changes.
Every student deserves to come into a safe and welcoming environment where they feel valued and free. We have heard from our students loud and clear. The activism that has been demonstrated amongst our students gives me hope for the future of this city and this country.
And joining us now with more details is WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson. Matt, this is the oft-talked about police and schools. What were some of the changes announced today?
So some of those included strengthening eligibility requirements for these school resource officers by prohibiting some of those with certain complaints of excessive force or incidents involving children from even working in school. So they'll no longer be allowed to be SROs. The school district is also streamlining complaints through the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, so those can be better tracked and investigated. And then the district is also adding some partnerships so it can do more trainings on de-escalation and other tactics for these school resource officers with the University of Chicago, Mikva Challenge, and Lurie Children's Hospital.
And Matt, many schools have voted to do away with the school resource officers in their schools, and then CPS announced it's slashing the budget for the remaining schools. Has this plan been met with any criticism?
It has, actually. I mean, students have been pushing for months to get school resource officers completely out of schools. So while Janice Jackson did point to that persistent student activism, many of those students were still upset that CPS didn't go far enough by totally pulling away its contract with the Chicago Police Department. There's still 50 high schools that did vote to maintain their school resource officer programs, and those will be back in place whenever students do go back to in-person learning this school year. And today, students with the activist group Voices for Youth in Chicago Education said CPS needs to terminate its full contract with the police department and instead direct those funds to additional mental and behavioral health services for students.
All right, Matt, thank you for the update. And you can read Matt's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now, Brandis, we go back to you.
Recent data from the Cook County Treasurer's Office shows that homes owned in predominantly black communities are more likely to be listed as delinquent than homes in predominantly white communities. But the Cook County Treasurer says that's because many homeowners miss exemptions that could save them thousands of dollars in their tax payments. Joining us is Maria Pappas, the Cook County Treasurer. Maria, welcome back to Chicago Tonight. First, let's establish what is the status of the annual tax sale.
So the status of the annual tax sale is that it's been indefinitely postponed due to COVID. It was supposed to take place on May 8th, and we don't know when it will be held. But on May 8th, there were actually 58,000 homes whose taxes would be sold. And now we have whittled it down to 39,000 because we are directing everyone to cookcountytreasurer.com. In the middle of that website is a purple box. And what we're finding is a vast majority of these homeowners, especially in African American and Latino wards, are on this list.
Right, and I want to come back to that in just a bit, because I know that since you postponed the tax sale, your office has been doing some work to reduce that 50-something thousand number of delinquent homes that are on the tax sale list. What's your office been doing there?
Well, once you get to cookcountytreasurer.com, you will put in an address. Don't put in north, south, east, and west. We've had 1 million people come to it this month alone. Scroll down. You'll know you're in the right place because you're going to see a picture of the house. Scroll down a little bit more, and it will tell you if you're on the tax sale list. So it will tell you this is the amount that you owe and the sale's been postponed. This is true for 39,000 pieces of property. If you scroll down just a little bit more, on cookcountytreasurer.com, which is up in 126 languages, it will tell you whether or not you're one of the people who's owed $79 million in double payments. So 2 people paid at a closing, and this goes back 20 years. So people are scrambling to get to the site to see if they're one of the homeowners who during the last 20 years overpaid. But there's another interesting stat on cookcountytreasurer.com. If you scroll down just a little bit more, it will tell you going back 4 years whether or not you missed a homeowner's exemption, you have to have lived in the home for a year, whether or not you missed a senior exemption, you have to be over 65, and whether or not you've missed going back 4 years, your senior freeze, you have to be 65, and the household must make under $65,000. So
and
you
Maria,
now have these.
And here's an example that your office gave us, actually. So an example is a homeowner in the 18th ward owed you almost $2,100 for the year 2018, but missed 3 years worth of those senior freeze exemptions, which I think that adds up to about $1,500.
Right,
what does that mean?
$500 a year.
Right. What does that mean for the homeowner?
That means for the homeowner that it's pretty simple. If they miss the senior freeze, they also miss the senior exemption. So if she owed me $2,100, fact of the matter is I'm trying to get this homeowner to cookcountytreasurer.com to see that she can apply online and get that $3,000 back between 4 to 6 weeks. Not necessary to come into the office anymore. We have this site set up so for any refund or any exemption, you can apply online.
Now, if the exemptions, if they add up to what could be thousands of dollars, keeping them out of the tax sale entirely, why do so many homeowners miss these exemptions?
Because many of our homeowners just simply don't know. The best example out there, I owe Jesse Jackson $4,000. Reverend Johnny Miller, who's got the biggest social engagement in the African-American community on the West Side, I owed him $1,500. I can tell you names of really prominent people in the city, including people in the news media who had no idea what a homeowner's exemption was, what a senior is, or a senior freeze is. They just don't know. So we are trying to educate, and we're doing it technologically. You can do this from your iPad, iPhone, computer, or 312.
And we've got 1 minute left. Sorry, Maria. Now, you also found that communities of color and immigrant communities are more likely to have missed these. So, for example, the 34th ward, which is a predominantly black ward, they had nearly 2,000 delinquent pins, 1,993. Compare this to the 47th ward, which has a predominantly white population of homeowners and a slightly larger population, only 45 delinquent pins. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's this disparity that's pretty clearly between communities of color and those that are not?
Because this whole effort that we're doing is an offshoot of Black Lives Matter. This is Black Houses Matter and Latino Houses Matter. It's simply a matter of not knowing. It's simply a matter of being uneducated about what it is that they're entitled to. And think about this. The Cook County Treasurer's Office is now sitting on about $140 million, and nobody knows, those people who are entitled to $140 million, that they're in fact entitled to it. So it's a matter of educating. The website's up in 126 languages. Last week alone, we got online 4,500 people applying for these exemptions and refunds because the word's getting out.
And I'm sure a lot of people
they're coming to the site.
Yeah, in a time like this, I'm sure a lot of folks are looking for ways that they can save money where they can.
My
even
thanks to
Cook County.
$200. We did WVON radio this morning, and people were calling in. They were giving us their
Every
address.
little bit counts. All right,
And
Maria
you can
Pappas,
call
Cook County Treasurer. We are out of time.
443-5100.
Got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Okay, bye.
And we're back with more right after this. It was former Second Lady Jill Biden's turn in the Democratic National Convention spotlight last night. As part of our special coverage of the DNC, our Spotlight Politics team joins us now to analyze last night's speakers and preview tonight's lineup. And here they are once again: Amanda Vinicky, Carol Maureen, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. So let's start with Jill Biden. Like I said, let's listen to a little of what she said last night.
Across this country, educators, parents, first responders, Americans of all walks of life are putting their shoulders back, fighting for each other. We haven't given up. We just need leadership worthy of our nation, worthy of you, honest leadership to bring us back together.
So Heather, what was her job last night? Was it obviously to reintroduce Joe Biden, but did she also do that effectively?
I think she did. Even though she was second lady for 8 years under President Obama's administration, not many people know that much about Jill Biden. She was a school teacher. She's a community college teacher. And so she really had two jobs last night. One, she wanted to tell us a little bit about her husband and introduce him as a family man, a father, somebody who has endured unimaginable loss in his personal life. But she also wanted to show us a little bit about what kind of first lady she will be if her husband is elected president. And I think that it's not by mistake that she spoke from an empty classroom, which, is really at the heart of what so many parents are worried about with their kids either going back to school or not going back to school amid this pandemic. So she had a lot to do, and a lot of people were listening. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Now, and as you mentioned, Heather, part of Joe Biden's story is of that profound loss and the story of how having health care helped his family. Let's take a look.
When I'm president, I will take care of your health care coverage and your family the same way I would my own. For that's what the presidency is, the duty to care for all of us, not just those who vote for us, but all of us. This job is not about me. It's about you. It's about us.
Carol, did this make him more relatable to voters?
I think it did in a lot of ways, but the most important way, Brandis, is beyond the empathy of it all, is the economy of it all. And when you talk about healthcare in America right now, you are talking about whether people can afford to eat or take care of their kids or go to the doctor. And so I think the relatable part of it is the Democratic National Committee keying in on America's most important issue by the polls, and that's the economy.
And Heather, I'm going to throw this back to you as well. Do you think this made him more relatable to voters?
Well, this is really at the heart of what they're trying to do at this convention. The first night, the second night, the central message has been, hey, here's Joe. He's a nice guy. He cares about you. He's not gonna lie to you. He's gonna give it to you straight. And he's just a regular guy. So this is really sort of hitting at the core of the message. It's sort of the flip side of Donald Trump is destroying democracy, which we will hear a little bit more about tonight. This is the positive case for Joe Biden, so they're trying to have it both ways.
So pivoting to national security, a number of high-profile national security leaders on both sides of the aisle were tapped to make the case for Biden's leadership and contrasted that with Donald Trump. Let's hear what former Secretary of State Colin Powell said.
With Joe Biden in the White House, you will never doubt that he will stand with our friends and stand up to our adversaries, never the other way around. He will trust our diplomats and our intelligence community, not the flattery of dictators and despots.
Paris, did the Democrats make an effective argument with this move last night?
Well, I think it's an important argument to make. Colin Powell, a Republican, although who has endorsed Democrats in the last 3 election cycles or presidential cycles, John Kerry, a Democrat. But I don't think this hits home as much as the personal stuff, as much as showing the Biden's love story, and as Carol said, the health care stuff. That's what's on voters' minds. And the central challenge of the Biden campaign up to this point has been to get people to go to the polls to vote for Joe Biden, not just against Donald Trump. There's an enthusiasm gap between the two campaigns. How do you do that? Well, you introduce Joe Biden, you make him relatable, you show the empathic side of him, you talk about health care, and I would imagine all those things, I think more effective than the national security stuff was the roll call and having, you know, the diversity of America sort of on display there, or the elevator security guard at the New York Times who introduced Joe Biden, again, showing his common touch. So I would imagine that what they've done here will inch those poll numbers up in terms of people going to the polls to vote for Joe Biden, not just against Donald Trump.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to both of those things that you just mentioned, Paris. But before that, Amanda, Bill Clinton went after the economy and economic turmoil and Trump's handling of that. How did you view that? Was it effective?
Well, yeah, there was a lot of tapping into nostalgia these past couple of nights. And yeah, if you harken back to the 90s, the economy was great then. This is something that is sort of hitting Trump where it hurts because he had banked on running his race for re-election on a soaring economy. And of course, the coronavirus, plus arguably his administration's handling of it, has tanked that as an option for Trump. So yes, I think that was something that has to be brought in because that's part of healthcare, right? When you can't pay for it, the choice that Carol mentioned between paying your bills, feeding your kid, going to the doctor, or what do you do? I mean, that was really sort of part of it. And I think otherwise, Clinton, I have to point out, he was big on the alliteration, and as a fan of that, I liked it. We had deny, distract, demean, blame, bully, belittle, and those are some quick sort of phrases that really can, again, pack a punch.
But, you know, I have to say there was some controversy within the party that they featured Bill Clinton, especially in the Me Too moment, and given Bill Clinton's history, and the fact that they are putting a lot of old Democratic Party stalwarts out there and giving them a lot of time, where you look at younger folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the representative from New York, getting 60 seconds. You know, there's a discussion and a dialogue in the party. Is that the face we want to be putting forward?
Classic Clinton. See what I did there, Amanda? So let's look ahead to tonight's lineup. The DNC will feature Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, former presidential candidate and Senator Elizabeth Warren, former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords will be talking about gun violence, and Vice Presidential nominee and U.S. Senator, of course, Kamala Harris. Chicago will also be well represented with former President Barack Obama speaking, along with Park Ridge native Hillary Clinton. Never heard of either of those people, who she was Secretary of State, of course, the 2016 Democratic nominee for president, and a performance by Oscar and Grammy winner and Southsider Jennifer Hudson. So let's dive right in. We have an excerpt of President Obama's remarks tonight. Quote, "Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't, and the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead, millions of jobs gone." It goes on to say, "Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before." Paris, you know, that's former President Barack Obama right there. Is he going right after Trump here?
He is. It's a far cry from the 2004 keynote speech that launched him into national superstardom, where he talked about there not being a blue states or red states. There's only the United States of America. You know, hope, unity over division, that's been his brand. I would have thought that he was going to kind of continue on that, although speak to the severity of the moment right now. I didn't think he would mention Donald Trump by name. Michelle Obama didn't, but he does right there. And contrast this with his last speech he gave as president in 2017. He was trying to assuage his supporters. He gave that speech at McCormick Place in Chicago. They were all very nervous and concerned about the coming Trump administration. He said, look, folks, the long-term trend is good. I believe in the institutions. I believe that the line is pointing up. It's just not a straight line. It's going to dip, but things are going to be good. But then he says in his speech tonight, I thought that Donald Trump was going to take this job seriously, and I was wrong. This echoes the things that Obama has said privately in remarks to former people that worked for him. He said he was really concerned. It was a far cry from the guy that's confident in democracy and America's future. He's clearly concerned.
Now, we also have a preview of Kamala Harris's remarks tonight. Quote, "We're at an inflection point. The constant chaos leaves us adrift. The incompetence makes us feel afraid. The callousness makes us feel alone. It's a lot. And here's the thing, we can do better and deserve so much more." She goes on to say, "We must elect a president who will bring something different, something better, and do the important work." Amanda, what do you expect? Is she going to go on the attack tonight? What else does she need to do?
So yes, she is going to go on the attack. While President Obama, this is certainly a turn from even his more recent remarks where he's been very careful to be critical of a past president, sort of keeping with decorum there. He's switching. President Trump, by the way, thrown decorum and practice out the window by campaigning and stumping while the DNC is going on. But Kamala Harris, yes, she's a former prosecutor. This is one of the reasons, presumably, that Biden chose her as his running mate, because she can go on the attack. That's not all she's going to do. She also is really still sort of introducing herself to the nation. We saw her on the debate stage. We've seen her ability to attack, but she is still introducing herself to voters, and we'll also see some of that softer side. Her family, where she came from, more than just that, but sure, she's going to go after Trump.
So, Harris, she's going to be in the spotlight today. This is the week that the country is celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Carol, talk to us a little bit about this historic moment, the history of this moment.
Pew recently did a study on this 100th anniversary, asking the question, what was the meaning of it? And fully half of American men and half of American women argued that there was nothing more significant than giving women the right to vote, to create the advancement that they have thus far experienced. And there's a gender gap. Women vote more than men. By a little bit, sometimes by a lot, but women vote more than men. The significance here is that this is a convention that is talking to women, about women, and for women, and turning that vote out, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, LGBTQ, name it, that's going to be the key to a victory, if there is a victory for Joe Biden.
Okay, so the woman who officially nominated Joe Biden met him at her job as an elevator security guard at the New York Times. Here she is.
I take powerful people up on my elevator all the time. When they get off, they go to their important meetings. Me, I just head back to the lobby. But in the short time I spent with Joe Biden, I could tell he really saw me, that he actually cared, that my life meant something to him. And I knew, even when he went into his important meeting, he'd take my story in there with him.
Heather, the DNC is clearly making a point of, elevating everyday voices. Did she steal the show?
She sure did for me, because if you remember correctly, Joe Biden was at the New York Times for their endorsement interview. Now, they endorsed Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, and they sort of looked past Joe Biden. But, I saw a tweet that said that, Joe Biden got the endorsement that mattered. And, Jacqueline is exactly who Joe Biden needs to, run to the polls on election day, because, she's Black, she's working class, she's somebody who's not sort of consumed with the sort of the daily, up and down horse race, but she's somebody who, she said, look, Joe Biden, spoke to me. And, I read an article where she told the Washington Post that she once had Oprah in her elevator and she was nonplussed, but it was really Joe Biden that had her starstruck. And I think that tells us a lot about the charisma that Joe Biden has, that I think perhaps maybe some of us in the media have looked past to see more flashier and perhaps a little bit younger politicians.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the virtual production values, because I think everybody, all of us, were kind of nervous. What is this going to look like? But the roll call came from the states with individual messages and voices. Carol, are we ever going to go back to doing that on the convention floor? What did you think of that?
You know, I expected nothing good of it, and I was knocked out by it. I thought it was touching when we talked about the disaster in Iowa, talking about calamari guy. Calamari guy's a star now. And by the way, it is causing people in Illinois to say, gee, do we have a state appetizer? And the answer is apparently not, but we have a state snack, popcorn. I mean, it caused people to think, to talk, and those people, American Samoa, Texas, I mean, they were each different, important, and provocative. I thought it was fabulous.
Matthew Shepard's parents, it was touching as well.
We got to see the rest of the rest of the country in that, which was a treat. Okay, my thanks to our Spotlight Politics team. We've got Amanda Vinicky, Carol Marine, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. And make sure you join us tomorrow for another special convention edition of Spotlight Politics, where we break down the top moments from tonight's speakers, and obviously tomorrow night, night 4, it is the final night. Stay tuned next for PBS NewsHour's coverage of Day 3 of the Democratic National Convention in just a few minutes right here on WTTW. But that's our show for this Wednesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night live at 7. We visit our neighbor to the north to see what the Democratic Convention going virtual means for the planned host city of Milwaukee.
And previewing Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's convention speech. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm named by elite lawyers as the top aviation firm in the country in 2020.